everyone. Thanks for joining us on Conversations on Sex, Addiction, and Relationships. I'm here with my colleagues and buddies, Tim Stein and Wendy Conquest. Dan is not able to be with us today. And today is a mailbag episode. And what is a mailbag episode? Well, when folks send a question or a comment over to our email address, and we put those together and go through them. And we want to really be responsive and interactive with you all. So Tim, just help folks. What's our email address?
Yeah, the email address is conversations.sar@gmail.com.
Perfect. Thank you. All righty. So you guys ready? First comment question here. All right. I'll do my best to read this carefully. All right, so this person says, I am a betrayed partner with a spouse who's had 2 affairs over 18-year marriage. A first affair lasted 7 years. A second affair lasted about 1.5 years. My husband insists he does not have a sex addiction. How do I tell the difference between addiction and infidelity? There we go.
Let me start by saying it can be both. That just because somebody is an addict doesn't mean they aren't committing infidelity. And if somebody is committing infidelity, doesn't mean they're not an addict. Those two things can happen simultaneously. So it's not, is it this or that? It may be both. But there is a separation. Not all addicts, have affairs. Not everyone who has an affair is acting out an addiction. So how do you tell the difference between that?
Let's ask Wendy.
Well, it's very interesting because an 18-year marriage, and so out of those 18 years, 8.5 years, he was involved with somebody else. 2 different people, but somebody else. That's a long time to not be monogamous. So I just want to state that. The very first thing that popped into my head was love addiction. So with affairs, usually they are not strictly sexual. Usually there's a big emotional, relational component. So that's the piece that I'm missing from this. And when we say affairs can manifest in a lot of different ways. They can be, I only see this person 4 times a year, or I see this person at work, after work, on weekends, all the time. There's a big disparity there. So I want to know more about, so it's very interesting because I'm not hearing that a disclosure happened. And so I would want the husband who has been engaging this way to do a therapeutic disclosure around not just a sex addiction, but around love addiction, and just a whole timeline for her to understand what the heck was happening over those 7 years, and then during that break, and then the 1.5 years.
So just to clarify for the people listening, can you give a thumbnail definition of love addiction?
Okay. Okay. So let me just say that a lot of sex addicts that I work with have an underlying love addiction.
Mm-hmm.
So some addicts, it can be purely sexual, meaning I watch pornography, I have hookups. If I start engaging with a sexual relationship with someone, I really don't want to be talking to them a lot. I really don't want to be there for them emotionally. I'm really looking for, at the most, some validation from them that I'm attractive, some validation from them that I'm a great guy or nice guy, and I'm using guy, but it could be woman, could be the other gender. So that's the distinction I'm trying to make. Is it sexual? Does it become emotional? Is there a it gets tricky because a lot of addicts will say, oh, I love you. Oh, I don't plan on being married. And yet they have no intention of leaving their marriage. but but it's part of the, I'm going to say part of the manipulation or the con to pull in that affair partner and give them hope, give them some sense of a promise for the future. Is this making sense?
Yeah, it's interesting you went to love addiction. I wasn't going there at all with this question. I was going to wanting more information of are there any other patterns of behavior that have occurred? Because there's truth to this. Could be two affairs, one a very long period of time, but two affairs and it not be addiction. So I just want to remind, like, addiction is maladaptive coping skill.
Mhm.
So the question gets curious for me of, was the person, the betrayer, using the affair, using that relationship as a coping skill? Did they feel compulsive about it? Did they think about it? Was it obsessive thinking and preoccupation about it? So I want to look at that kind of pattern and use of the relationship,
Yeah.
or was something going on in the relationship that wasn't meeting one or both of their needs, and poor decisions and hurtful, painful decisions were made to go outside the marriage instead of fixing it. But I'm looking at pattern of behaviors. That's what first comes to me of the difference
Mhm.
between infidelity and addictive behavior.
Tim, what you were going to say something?
Well, I was going with the patterns of behaviors and like, so is this just somebody having an affair? And I don't mean to minimize with just, but is this somebody having an affair? Or is this an addiction? And like you were saying, Jeannie, is there obsession? Is there preoccupation? Has he tried to end the relationship and been unable to? Has he limited other activities or social engagements in his life in order to maintain the affair on the side? Has his, all those kind of things show up. But the other piece for me, Jeannie, when you were saying what are the other behaviors that comes to mind for me, is that one of the things that we know is that it's very rare that we have an addict that shows up and their addiction is limited to one behavior, or at least one behavior category. Usually when there's a sex addiction going on, we're looking at like a minimum of 3 categories that are sort of showing up in their behaviors. Well, the trifecta that I refer to is porn, masturbation, and fantasy. And so he's having an affair. I would want to know how. I would be thinking, how is this classified? Is this like, paying for sex with power? Is this conquest? What is this, a relationship addiction? Is this love addiction? How did that show up? But is there boundary crossing? Is he somebody who's always telling the sexual jokes or bringing sex into inappropriate, conversations? Is this somebody who is looking at porn in a compulsive way? What are the other behaviors that are there? And if I'm not seeing the other behaviors, if all I'm seeing is this person has affairs and it doesn't appear to be a compulsive decision, it doesn't appear to be a overwhelmed with stress, and I just keep going into an escape with somebody else, then I don't hear addiction. Then I hear someone behaving badly. If I hear, the compulsive nature, if I hear the stress management nature, if I hear the escalation of other behaviors around it, then it's probably then it's worth looking into, is that this might be an addiction.
It's also important for folks to know that they're, as certified sex addiction therapists, one of the things that we are trained to do is to assess for sex addiction, to help make those determinations. And so, if you're wondering if you have an addiction or if it's infidelity or that's the situation in your marriage, like this person, I would say go get an assessment and have a conversation with a professional who knows some of the better good questions to ask in this particular venue, to help make that determination. Don't feel like you have to do that on your own.
Right. And I want to say that, so if you do go to a certified sex addiction therapist, we have access to a thing called the SDI, the Sexual Dependency Inventory. And it's an extensive assessment online that I'm going to say, potential addict takes to determine, okay, is there sex addiction, and to what extent. The subtest in there is on a bell curve. And so we're able to see how deeply rooted the addiction is. It's a wonderful assessment. So if you're seeing a CSAT, that's an important question to ask, is can we do the SDI if they don't mention it?
Let me also throw in the SDMI, because we use that, the sexual dependency, digital media inventory, sexual digital media. So if someone is wondering, is this a porn use addiction or not addiction? And anything that's regarding internet or cyber, that's the assessment to talk about. But again, your CSAT would know those things. So you're just asking for help to determine whether an addiction is present or not.
Also, while I do recommend going and seeing a CSAT and getting an assessment and having somebody who's got expertise in this area who can answer your questions, there are places that you can start on your own. There's a simple 6-question assessment called Pathos, which is basically, are you preoccupied with sexual thoughts? Are you hiding some sexual behaviors from others? Have you sought help for problematic sexual behavior? Have others suffered due to your sexual behavior? Do you feel controlled by your sexual desire? And do you feel depressed after sexual behavior or activities? And if any of those questions for you is a yes, then it's an indication of, hey, we should go have more of an assessment and see if there's something there. Also, a quick online assessment for sex addiction that you can do on your own for free that can sort of open the door is the SAST, the Sexual Addiction Screening Test. And my recollection is that is currently located on sexhelp.com. And as if you're an addict, you can go there and you can follow the links to the Am I a Sex Addict? And you can take the SAST, and it'll give you a general sort of indication of if your answers fall within the realm of what we see with sex addicts or not. I will always throw out the caveat, however, that it's good to have other people check your answers, because addicts are notorious for having denial or not really having a clear perspective of their behavior and the reality of their behavior. So if you think you're an addict and you take any of those assessments and it comes back to you saying, absolutely not, great. Go check with other people, have them take the test as you, and see if your scores come back the same.
Okay.
I just want to do one other thing real quick. So recently I read that the majority of people that have affairs, they are happy with their marriages, they love their wives, but that they want more sex. They just want to be more sexual. And so I read that and I was like, well, this is interesting. Let me put a pin on that. But the biggest question I have for this person who wrote in and her husband would be, why didn't you tell me? Like, why couldn't you come to me? So what I really like in situations like this, like if somebody says, well, I just need more sex, it's like, okay, then you and I need to have a conversation about that. And we need to determine if that's okay for both of us. So if I say, hey, I like to have sex maybe, I don't know, once every 2 weeks. And the other person says, you know what? I'm a highly sexual person. I need sex 2 to 3 times a week. Okay, what do they want to do? Then it becomes a dialogue between the two, between the couple. But when somebody just unilaterally says, hey, I want more sex, I'm going to secretly go off and do that with somebody else, that's a huge problem. And to come back and say, well, I just needed more sex, it doesn't cut it.
No, it needs to be a mutual conversation and agreement between both partners. Okay, so we've got another question from someone else in our mailbag. And this person writes, I'm convinced my husband is a sex addict, but he has never admitted it. He denied every single item, whether I've seen it for myself or not. Gaslighting has become a norm, and when that doesn't work, rage takes over. How do I encourage him to come into the open? I want to work on this because I love him. What do you guys think?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry that this person, it sounds like she's in distress and frustrated. So I just want to validate that. I wish that this person had said some of the behaviors so that we would know more about this. Is this pornography? Is this cam to cam activity? So what exactly are we talking about? Um, and I think that it's very, very important for her to be documenting what she is experiencing or seeing, and then being able to, when she confronts him, to say, hey, I walked in, you were watching porn. I saw what I saw, you were watching porn. So I don't want to be with someone that's watching pornography. So what are we going to do? Like kind of that, I'm thinking sort of that direct, if that's what's happening, but I don't know what's happening.
See, and for me, I went into a different place where I don't need to know what's happening. I went into a different question of how do you help someone else get help? Or if I think they need help, but they don't want it, what then?
Well, yes. So I think Jeannie, you and I are on the same page there. And I'm hearing that too. So the first thing is, how is she communicating with him is what I'm thinking. Because if she says, hey, I see you watching porn the other day, and he goes, oh no, I wasn't. No, that you did. No. Well, I thought I saw you. Oh, wasn't me. That wasn't. So then now you're in a, okay, I saw you, no, I didn't. That could be the gaslighting piece that she was referring to, potentially. So how does she either be more direct, or so that's what I was saying around the
Okay. Yeah.
communication piece.
Yeah. And I think there's a big difference of having direct information that you can assert versus wondering. In my mind, answering this individual, it was, if you believe they need help or something is off and the other individual is not willing, do not let that stop you from getting the help you need. Do not let that stop you. Get into counseling. Find a coach that works for you. Work through, how do I work this in relationship when I think there's a big problem, and in this situation he does not. I
Right.
don't want that individual to feel stuck at home or alone. Please do access resources. You cannot make someone else do something. We have it. Tim and I say this, and we say it often. I can lead the horse to water, but I cannot make the horse drink.
Yeah.
And that is the same thing, is that I can offer services, and you as a loved one can offer support to get some more help. But if they're not willing to, don't let that stop you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to punctuate with what Jeannie was saying. You cannot, as much as you love him, as much as you think there's a problem, if he doesn't think there's a problem, he doesn't want to do anything, there's nothing you can really do.
Yeah. And it's not going to work well if you just drag him in by his ear and say, you're going to go do this work. Now, I would lean on boundaries, for you as the partner. If you're seeing this and you're uncomfortable with it, what are your boundaries? Hey, I see these patterns. I'm worried about them. I I am I want something to shift and change, and I'm realizing I feel unsafe, or I feel I'm scared, or I'm whatever. And so I am going to ask that you at least go get an assessment, or you go to a 12-step meeting, or you go whatever it is, and check stuff out, and lean into that, because this isn't working for me. And if you're willing to do that, then I'm willing to stay here. If you're not willing to do that, then I don't know what the boundary is. I'm not going to sleep in the same room. I'm not going to have sex with you. I'm going to move out of the house. We're not going to stay in relationship. I'm going to leave. Whatever that might be. But what is your boundary? And even with that, I think it's important to recognize, like Jeannie was saying, we can't force other people to do stuff. We can lead them to water. We can't make them drink. In our program, and I assume this is true for you as well, Wendy, we've had plenty of addicts that have come through our doors that are what we refer to as partner referred. And some of them crash and burn spectacularly. They have no interest in doing that work. The first opportunity to leave, they do, because they are only there because their partner expects them to be there. And so they never really buy in, and change never really happens. And we've had a lot of addicts that have come into our program, again, being partner referred. But as they get into the program and pieces start to fall in place and they start to see the patterns, they get a lot of motivation for, oh, I'm seeing this now. I see the consequences, I see the problems, and I have a lot of motivation to change my life and how I'm approaching sex and my relationship. And we see spectacularly fabulous results when people can step into that. But you can't force the other person to find that motivation and to find that willingness to step in. You can set a boundary and you can encourage them to attend the program. And you can hope that they're able to step in that direction, but you can't make them.
Thanks for those words, Tim. You know what it made me think of is, so usually, and this is for this person who wrote it, usually when the partner says, oh my gosh, you're doing this, the secret gets exposed. And at that time, the person that is doing that behavior usually goes one of two routes. No, you're seeing things, that's not it. Or they say, oh my gosh, I need help. And those are the people that say, I need help, right? Or if the partner says, there's a problem, you need help, they do come in because they've been exposed by the partner. And they may even start doing the work to appease the partner. But sooner or later, it shifts to, wow, I need to do this work for myself. So, I agree completely with what you said, Tim, is that some come in being dragged and they're like, I don't want to be here. I don't think there's a problem. And they might spend the time and money, but then there's not much movement.
Yeah.
And they drop out.
Mhm. So there you have it, folks. Those are two different items from our mailbag, and we really want to be interactive with you all. So if you do have questions for us and you're not seeing some of those questions already answered in other podcasts or quick conversations, then please do send us an email. And Tim, what's the email?
Email is conversations.sar@gmail.com.
There you go.
If you like this episode, please like us or share it if you feel that's appropriate. And certainly if you are not a follower of us, please do so.
Thanks so much. See you next time.
Be well, everyone.